My name is Ethan Cole, and at 25, before I lost my memory, I practically hated my arranged wife's guts. Then I smashed my head, and suddenly I was cornering my intense wife against a wall. "Hey there, beautiful," I'd said, a goofy grin probably plastered on my face. "You look an awful lot like the woman of my dreams." My buddy, Daniel, had rushed over, clamping a hand over my mouth. "Dude, that's Vivian Hayes, the very woman you despise, your sworn enemy." Later, watching her gently spoon-feed me breakfast, I couldn't help but think, well, this is actually pretty good. My name is Ethan Cole. I woke up with my mind a total blank. The doctor said I'd hit my head, causing temporary amnesia, and needed plenty of rest. A crowd of people milled around my hospital room, all talking at once, their expressions a confusing mix of emotions. But the first person I truly saw was her. She stood by the window, bathed in a soft glow from the sun, wearing a simple white dress. Her dark hair cascaded like a waterfall, and her skin was as fair as snow. She watched me silently, her eyes as deep as a starlit ocean, holding an undeniable possessiveness. Stunning. My heart hammered in my chest, completely out of my control. My mind was empty, but some primal instinct urged me to speak. I met her gaze, plastering what I hoped was a charming smile on my face. "Hey, beautiful," I said, "you remind me of someone." She raised an eyebrow, not speaking, just observing me, a faint hint of a smile playing on her lips. Beside her, a man in a sharp suit, looking every bit the corporate exec, visibly stiffened, about to intervene. But my mouth moved faster. "The woman of my dreams," I finished. "So tell me, how do I get to know you better?" I winked, trying to recall some cheesy pickup line I'd heard somewhere. "Should I sweep you off your feet, or charm you with sweet talk?" Pfft. Someone nearby couldn't hold back a laugh. The corporate exec man darted forward, clamping his hand firmly over my mouth. He leaned in, whispering urgently in my ear, "Ethan, my man, are you crazy? That's Vivian Hayes. The Vivian you absolutely despise. The one you swore you'd never marry in a million years." Vivian Hayes? Arranged marriage? Despise? The words hit my ears, but they stirred nothing. I only noticed that when she heard despise, Vivian's eyes subtly darkened, and the air around her instantly chilled. She ignored the exec, walking straight to my bedside. She looked down at me, her gaze assessing, and was that hurt? No, couldn't be. A woman like her wouldn't show weakness. She reached out, her cool fingertips lightly brushing my forehead. Her voice was clear and crisp, yet held a strange, hypnotic power. "Ethan, repeat what you just said." The chill from her touch made me shiver, but for some reason, it also felt strangely comforting. I pushed away the hand still covering my mouth and looked up at her, utterly serious, even a little bit hurt. "They said you're someone I despise? But I feel like you're the woman of my dreams." Vivian froze. Everyone in the room froze. The exec looked like the sky had fallen, wringing his hands. "It's over, it's really over. He's completely lost it." But Vivian slowly curved her lips into a smile. It wasn't the faint, distant smile from before. This was radiant, brimming with extreme satisfaction and possessiveness, like a vibrant red snow lotus blooming suddenly on an ice mountain, breathtaking and captivating. She leaned down, close to my ear, and in a voice only we could hear, she spoke each word clearly. "Ethan, you are mine." Her warm breath brushed my earlobe, carrying a faint, cool fragrance. My heart skipped a beat. The day I was discharged, Vivian came to pick me up herself, settling into her understated yet luxurious car. I curiously surveyed everything. Did we used to have a bad relationship? I ventured to ask. Vivian was looking at documents on a tablet. She didn't even lift her head, her tone even. "Yeah. Why?" She finally turned to look at me, her eyes deep. "What do you think?" I looked at her exquisite profile, so close, and my heart started racing again. I answered honestly, "I don't know, but I feel like now. I really like you." She seemed to smile faintly, then turned back to her documents, giving only a soft "hm." But I saw her fingers, gripping the edge of the tablet, tighten just a bit. The car pulled into a sprawling mansion on a private estate in the hills. The setting was unbelievably serene. The staff respectfully called her Ms. Hayes and me Mr. Cole. She led me to the room next to the master bedroom. You'll stay here from now on. We're not staying together? I blurted out, a hint of disappointment in my voice. Vivian looked at me intently, her expression complex and unreadable. You never used to let me into your room. A strange pang hit me. What kind of jerk was I before I lost my memory? As I pondered, Vivian's phone rang. She walked to the window to answer, her voice cold and businesslike. I watched her back, slender, poised, yet strangely lonely. Impulsively, I walked over and gently hugged her from behind. Her body instantly stiffened. The person on the other end of the phone seemed to still be talking, but she fell silent. I could feel her body tense, as if she was trying desperately to control something. After several seconds, she finally said coldly into the phone, I'll call you back, and hung up. She didn't move, didn't push me away, but her voice was tight. Let go. No way. I buried my face in the cool fragrance of her neck, nuzzling her. Wifey, you smell so good. Who are you calling wifey? Her voice held a hint of annoyance, but her ears were subtly turning red. They said it. We're in an arranged marriage, so that makes you my wife. I stated matter-of-factly, tightening my embrace. Was I blind before? To not want such a beautiful wife? Vivian's body slowly relaxed. She tried to subtly pull away, but couldn't, so she let me hold her. She just huffed. You just figuring that out now? I'm figuring it out now. I turned her to face me, looking into her eyes with utmost seriousness, even a hint of pleading. I'll be good to you from now on. So good. Her eyes were like dark, wet obsidian, reflecting my image. She looked at me for a long time, then gently pushed me away, her voice returning to its usual cool composure. Cut the sweet talk. Go take a shower, change, and come down for dinner. With that, she turned and walked away, her steps still graceful, but I thought I saw them quicken just a bit. Dinner was lavish. It was just the two of us at the long dining table. I sat next to her. She glared, but I grinned shamelessly, piling food onto her plate. Wifey, this shrimp is delicious. Try some. Wifey, have some soup. It's good for you. She kept a poker face, but silently ate everything I put on her plate. The butler and staff, standing nearby, kept their gazes down, but I swore their shoulders were shaking. After dinner, I tried to follow her to her study, but she shut the door on me. I have work to do, don't disturb me. I slunk back to my room, feeling a bit dejected. Lying on the bed, all I could think about was her. Her cool expression, her flushed ears, her telling me to cut the sweet talk. My heart felt full, soft and warm. Is this what it feels like to like someone? Why did the old me hate her? I couldn't understand it. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty. Passing the master bedroom, I noticed the door was ajar, a faint light glowing within. I gently pushed it open. Vivian was curled up on the sofa, asleep, covered only by a thin blanket. Her brow was furrowed, and she still held a document in her hand. The floor lamp beside her cast a soft, yellow glow, highlighting her gentle sleeping face. Stripped of her usual coolness and assertiveness, she looked fragile and endearing. My heart softened, and I tiptoed over. I carefully tried to ease the document from her grasp, but she clutched it tightly. I had to bend down, intending to carry her to the bed. The moment I touched her, she startled awake. Her eyes were first hazy, then instantly sharp and cold, filled with full alertness. She sharply swatted my hand away. Who let you in? That look pierced me. I saw you fell asleep here. You might catch a cold. I explained a little awkwardly. She recognized me, and the ice in her eyes slowly thawed. She rubbed her temples, her voice laced with fatigue. Get out. I'll carry you to bed, I insisted. She looked up at me, her gaze complex. Ethan, you don't have to do this. Do what? You don't have to pretend to be nice to me just because you lost your memory. She pulled a sardonic smile. When your memory comes back, you'll find me irritating again. My heart felt a sharp, painful twist. So the old me was such a jerk that she couldn't even believe a shred of kindness from the current me. I knelt down, meeting her gaze levelly, and spoke with utmost seriousness. Vivian Hayes, listen to me. I don't know what kind of jerk the old Ethan was, but the current me, sitting right here, looking at you, feels nothing but happiness. I want to be good to you. I can't help but want to be close to you. This isn't pretending. This is instinct. I took her cool hand and placed it over my chest. Feel that. It's beating really fast, isn't it? It's telling me it likes you. Vivian stared at me, her eyes seeming to well up faintly. She abruptly pulled her hand away, stood up, and turned her back to me, her voice returning to its cold firmness. Sweet talk. Go back to sleep. But I saw her fingers hanging at her side, trembling slightly. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of food. Opening my eyes, I saw Vivian standing by my bed with a tray. On it was a light, comforting breakfast and a glass of juice. Her expression was still distant. You're awake? Come eat breakfast. I was overwhelmed, sitting up abruptly. Wifey, you brought me breakfast yourself? Maria's off today, she said, placing the tray on the nightstand without expression. Eat quickly before it gets cold. I watched her turn to leave, and on impulse, I spoke. Wifey, feed me. Vivian stopped, turning back to me in disbelief, looking at me like I was an alien. Say that again. My arm feels weak. I whined, looking at her with wide, pleading eyes. It might be a side effect from yesterday's crash. Wifey, please feed me. I watched as a faint blush slowly spread across her fair face, reaching her ears. She glared at me, her chest rising and falling slightly, clearly annoyed. But in the end, she came back, her face stiff, and picked up the bowl. She spooned out a bit of oatmeal, gently blew on it, then offered it to my mouth. Her movements were a little stiff, and her eyes avoided mine. But inside, I was absolutely ecstatic. Oh yeah, my wife is feeding me breakfast. The oatmeal was just the right temperature, soft and sweet. I opened my mouth and ate, my eyes fixed on her. She grew uncomfortable under my gaze and snapped. What are you staring at? Eat. My wifey's beautiful, I said with a grin after swallowing the oatmeal. She scooped another spoonful, rather roughly stuffing it into my mouth, trying to shut me up. But I continued, muffled, the breakfast my wifey feeds me is the best breakfast in the world. Her movements paused slightly, her eyelashes fluttering. She didn't look up, just mumbled, shut up and eat. Sunlight streamed through the gap in the curtains, falling on her lowered eyelashes, casting tiny shadows. In that moment, everything felt perfectly peaceful. I wish time could stop right there. After breakfast, I leaned back against the headboard, feeling utterly content. Vivian was clearing the dishes, asking as if casually, "Do you have any plans today?" "No plans," I said. "Just spending time with my wifey." Her movements halted. She glanced at me. "I have a video conference this morning. Then I'll just sit nearby and watch you. I promise not to disturb you," I immediately declared. She neither agreed nor objected. That counted as implicit consent. So, she sat at her desk for her video conference, and I pulled up a chair a short distance behind her, quietly watching her. At work, she was focused, her tone calm and decisive, exuding an aura of powerful strategic command. She was a completely different person from the one with flushed ears who fed me breakfast. But in every way, I couldn't take my eyes off her. The meeting seemed to be going poorly. The other party appeared to be questioning one of her decisions. Vivian's voice chilled, her gaze sharp as a knife. "Director Peterson, the final decision on this project rests with me. If you have an objection, you may keep it, or you may submit your resignation." The person on the screen instantly fell silent. I looked at her stern profile, but a strange pang of sympathy shot through my heart. To shoulder such a massive corporation, she must be incredibly stressed. And the old me not only didn't understand her, but actually opposed her. I really was. A complete jerk. The meeting ended. Vivian closed her laptop and rubbed her temples, a hint of fatigue on her face. I immediately moved closer, placing my hands on her temples and gently massaging them. Her body stiffened, instinctively trying to pull away. "Don't move," I murmured. "Let me help you, it'll feel good." My touch was very light, my fingertips sensing the cool feel of her skin. She slowly relaxed, leaning back in her chair, closing her eyes. Her long eyelashes cast small shadows beneath them, like tiny fans. "Wifey, you work too hard," I whispered. She didn't speak. After a long moment, so long I thought she'd fallen asleep, she softly hummed. Her voice was very faint, carrying a trace of almost imperceptible reliance. At noon, we ate lunch together. The atmosphere was much more relaxed than yesterday. Although she still wasn't very talkative, at least she wasn't cold-faced anymore. I told her jokes that I somehow remembered clearly, even though I didn't know where I'd heard them. At first, she resisted, but eventually couldn't help it, a small curve appearing at the corner of her lips. Sunlight streamed through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, filling the entire space. Watching her gentle smile, I felt like the whole world brightened. In the afternoon, the family doctor came for a follow-up. After the examination, the doctor said my recovery was good, but couldn't say when my memory would return. Vivian stood nearby, listening to the doctor, her expression unchanged. After seeing the doctor out, I sidled up to her and whispered, "Wifey, do you want my memory to come back?" Vivian was pouring water. At my question, her hand paused. She turned and looked at me, her eyes deep and unreadable. "It doesn't matter." "How can it not matter?" I pressed. "What if I regain my memory and turned back into that jerk who hated you?" She took a step closer, looking up at me, her eyes filled with a tenacious certainty. "Then I will lock you away. Lock you in a place only I know. You will only see me, only depend on me, every single day, until you love me again, or until you can't imagine life without me." Her voice was very soft, yet carried an undeniable madness. My heart rate spiraled out of control again. Thump, 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 thump. Not from fear, but from excitement. This feeling of being intensely needed, of being crazily possessed, was like a drug, intoxicating me. I looked at her red lips, so close, and my throat tightened. "You won't need to go through all that trouble." I leaned down, closer to her, my nose almost touching hers. "The me right now, I already can't live without you." Her pupils slightly dilated. Our breaths mingled. The atmosphere was charged with extreme intimacy. Just as my lips were about to touch hers, she suddenly turned her head, avoiding me. My kiss landed on her slightly warm cheek. Soft, delicate, carrying her unique, cool fragrance. She pushed me away, taking a step back, her breathing a little unsteady, her eyes darting around. "I have a contract to review." With that, she practically fled. I watched her retreating back, then touched my own lips. The warmth and sensation of her cheek seemed to linger. I chuckled softly. "My wifey, she's kinda cute." That night, lying in bed, I replayed the kiss on her cheek from earlier, my heart pounding like a rabbit. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Eventually, I got up, intending to get a glass of milk from the kitchen. Passing Vivian's bedroom, I noticed a light still on. The door was still ajar. I hesitated, then gently knocked. No response. I cautiously pushed the door open. Only a bedside lamp was on, casting a dim light. Vivian was lying on her side, seemingly asleep, but her brows were tightly furrowed, beads of sweat on her forehead, and her lips moved slightly, as if she was talking in her sleep. I walked over softly, leaning down to try and hear what she was saying. "Don't go. Ethan hates me. Oh my." Her voice was broken, laced with a hint of a sob and unease. My heart twisted painfully. She was having a nightmare. Was it something I said earlier that made her uneasy? I knelt by the bed, cautiously reaching out to smooth her furrowed brow. The moment my fingertips touched her skin, she jolted awake. Her beautiful eyes, filled with lingering terror and vulnerability, instantly turned cold and sharp when she saw me, carrying a hint of embarrassed anger at having her secret exposed. "Who let you in? Get out." She snatched a pillow and threw it at me, her voice hoarse from sleep, but piercingly cold. I didn't dodge, letting the pillow hit me. I just looked at her, my heart aching. "You were having a nightmare," I said softly. She reacted like a cornered cat, instantly bristling. "None of your business. Get out." I didn't move. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her. "I'll stay with you. I don't need you." She pulled the blanket higher, wrapping herself tightly, turning her back to me, but her shoulders were trembling slightly. "You do," I insisted, reaching out and gently patting her back through the blanket like soothing a child. "Go back to sleep. I'll watch over you here." "Ethan." She suddenly spun around, her eyes red, glaring at me. "What exactly do you want? Is playing this amnesia game fun? Is it fun to watch me fall apart over you?" Her voice was thick with suppressed sobs and fury. I froze, looking at her red-rimmed eyes. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, suffocating pain. "I'm not playing games," I said, looking at her, each word deliberate and sincere. Vivian, I don't know what happened between us before, but the current me, seeing you have a nightmare, it hurts. Seeing you upset, I want to comfort you. Seeing you pretend to be strong, I want to protect you. This isn't a game. This is what my heart tells me. I pointed to my chest. Vivian stared at me, the anger slowly draining from her eyes, replaced by a bewildered disbelief. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but ultimately said nothing. She just turned back around, facing away from me, wrapping herself even tighter in the blanket. But this time, she didn't tell me to leave. And I didn't. I just sat by the bed, gently patting her back through the blanket, over and over. The room was quiet, with only our soft breaths and her gradually steadying heartbeat. After who knows how long, her breathing became long and even. She seemed to have fallen back asleep. I looked at her peaceful, sleeping face, my heart filled with a profound tenderness. I leaned down and, very, very lightly, placed a kiss on her hair. "Good night, wifey," I whispered. Moonlight streamed through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow on her face. I sat by the bed, watching her sleeping profile, feeling a peace and contentment I'd never known. Her soft hair still lingered on my fingertips, carrying a faint, cool fragrance. This woman, who had declared she would lock me away, now curled up under the covers like a child starved for security. What kind of jerk was I before my amnesia? Why was she so uneasy, even in her sleep? Those blank memories, like beasts hidden in a fog, stirred a vague irritation within me. But looking at her peaceful face, that irritation quickly faded. No matter what happened before, now, at this moment, I wanted to protect her. That was enough. I sat there, I don't know for how long, until the sky began to lighten. My legs were numb, and I carefully shifted, afraid of waking her. But as if sensing my movement, her eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. The initial haze of sleep cleared, and when she saw me sitting by the bed, her eyes instantly became sharp, carrying a hint of alertness and an almost imperceptible panic. "Why are you still here?" She propped herself up, the thin blanket slipping to reveal her delicate collarbone. Her voice was hoarse from sleep, but her tone had returned to its usual coolness. "I told you I'd watch over you." I looked at her and smiled. "Did you sleep well?" She avoided my gaze, reaching up to smooth her slightly disheveled long hair, using it to hide her emotions. "You meddle too much." Her eyes swept over my stiff legs, and she pursed her lips, ultimately saying nothing harsh. "I'll go get breakfast ready." She threw back the covers and got out of bed, her movements carrying a trace of hurriedness. "Let Maria do it today," I said, noticing the faint dark circles under her eyes. "You should rest a bit more." Her steps paused. Without turning around, she simply said, "No need." Watching her retreating back, I rubbed my numb legs, feeling a slight sweetness in my heart. She seemed less resistant to me now. Breakfast was still a light, comforting meal, but today it was served by Maria. Vivian had already changed into a sharp white pantsuit, her hair pulled back, revealing her elegant, fragile neck. She was once again the formidable CEO of Hayes Industries. She sat at the head of the dining table, sipping her oatmeal while reading financial news on her tablet. I moved closer, sitting beside her. She glanced at me, but said nothing. "Wifey, are you busy today?" I serve her a crystal shrimp dumpling. She replied, a simple affirmation. "Then I'll wait for you to get off work." I looked at her with hopeful eyes. She put down her spoon, gracefully wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Suit yourself." Her tone was still even, but I noticed her eyelashes flutter once. That hint of sweetness bubbled up in my heart again. After breakfast, she picked up her bag, ready to leave for the office. I followed her, like a doting spouse seeing off their partner. At the front door, she put on her shoes, then suddenly turned to look at me. I almost bumped into her. "What is it?" I asked. She looked at me, her eyes complex, as if she had something to say but couldn't. Finally, she just reached up and gently brushed my forehead, where a small bandage was still visible. "Remember to change your dressing," she said, and without waiting for my reaction, she turned and opened the door, leaving quickly. Her movement was as swift as a gust of wind. I stood there, stunned, my forehead still feeling the faint, cool touch of her fingertips. My heart felt as if it had been lightly tickled by a feather. It was a strange mix of warmth and tingling. Maria, the housekeeper, watching from the side, couldn't help but smile faintly. Mr. Colmes, Hayes really does care about you. I touched my forehead, a silly grin spreading across my face. I spent the entire morning feeling restless. I walked around the enormous mansion several times, trying in vain to recover some familiar memories. My mind remained a blank slate regarding the past. Only fleeting moments involving Vivian, as if etched deep in my soul, grew clearer and clearer. Her slightly flushed ears, her feigned indifference, her slightly trembling hand when she fed me breakfast. These details, now recalling them, held a fatal attraction. Close to noon, the doorbell rang. Maria answered it, and then a young man walked in, wearing a flashy shirt and with slicked back hair. He carried a fruit basket and immediately looked around, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. Well, Ethan, my boy, glad you're okay. Heard you lost your memory? Is it true? Blake prattled on, trying to clap me on the shoulder. I instinctively stepped back, avoiding his touch. This man gave me an uneasy feeling. Who are you? I asked, frowning. It's me, Blake Harrison, your best pal. Blake pointed to himself, feigning hurt. No way. You really don't remember? We practically grew up together. Best pal? I scrutinized him, trying to find a flicker of familiarity in his ingratiating smile. Nothing. Only strangeness and an underlying dislike. Do you need something? My tone wasn't exactly welcoming. Blake seemed a bit awkward. He placed a fruit basket on the table, then leaned in, lowering his voice. Buddy, I heard you're getting along pretty well with Vivian these days. His eyes held a probing, almost gleeful look. My guard went up, but I kept my face expressionless. So, hey, nothing, just a reminder, Blake winked. Don't be fooled by her act. That woman's got a nasty streak. She practically drove you to a breakdown before, remember? Drove me to a breakdown? I looked at Blake, trying to discern the truth in his words. How'd she drive me to a breakdown? I asked. How else? The arranged marriage. She used her family's power to force you to marry her. When you refused, she actively sabotaged you, stealing your projects, cutting off your funding. She drove off all your girlfriends one by one. Ruthless man. Blake spewed, spittle flying. You used to say she made you sick to your stomach. Wish she'd just disappear. My heart slowly sank. His words, like thorns, pricked at my core, even though I didn't remember if it was true. All right. Blake suddenly remembered something, pulling out his phone and showing me a picture. Look, this is Chloe Davies, your favorite girl from college. Sweet and sensible. If it wasn't for Vivian. Chloe Davies, your favorite girl from college. Sweet and sensible. If it wasn't for Vivian. The photo showed a girl in a white dress, smiling gently in a field of flowers. She was pretty, but my heart felt nothing. In fact, she seemed a little blunt, not as captivating as the subtle, elegant charm in Vivian's eyes. What did Vivian do to her? I asked, my voice a little dry. What else? Threats and intimidation. Scared her so much she left the country. Blake fumed. So, I'm telling you, buddy, now that you've lost your memory, don't let her charm you. That woman is a psycho, a control freak. She just wants to completely control you. Control. Lock away. Only her. His words echoed Vivian's tenacious gaze from last night. My breath hitched. Blake continued to babble. If you ask me, this is the perfect chance to divorce her. After all, Cole Enterprises doesn't rely entirely on Hayes Industries anymore. Are you done? I cut him off, my voice chilling. Blake blinked. Huh. If you're done, please leave. I stood up, directly showing him the door. No, Ethan, you. Blake looked bewildered, apparently not expecting this reaction from me. My wife will be home from work soon, I said, looking at him, each word distinct. She doesn't like outsiders lingering here too long. Blake's face shifted several times. Then he grudgingly picked up his car keys. Fine, you little. Just wait till your memory comes back. You'll regret this. He stalked off, annoyed. The mansion returned to silence. I stood there, Blake's words reverberating in my mind. Forced you into marriage. Stole your projects. Drove off your girlfriends. Control freak. Control you. Each word felt like a heavy stone pressing on my chest. If all of that was true, then what was this reliance and affection I felt for her now? A trick of amnesia? Was that instinctive attraction fake too? I ran a frustrated hand through my hair, my mind a tangled mess. No, that's not right. If she was truly so terrible, why did her eyes hold vulnerability and unease after my amnesia? Why did her hand tremble slightly when she fed me breakfast? Why did she look so helpless when she had a nightmare? Blake's words couldn't be entirely trusted. At the very least, I couldn't just listen to his side of the story. I would wait for Vivian to come back and ask her directly. Time passed agonizingly slowly. I paced back and forth in the living room, constantly checking the wall clock. This was the first time waiting felt so long and tormenting. At 4 o'clock, the sound of a car engine finally reached the driveway. My heart leaped. Vivian pushed open the door and walked in. She seemed tired, taking off her heels and rubbing her temples. Seeing me standing in the center of the living room, she paused. "What are you doing standing there?" she asked, her voice holding an almost imperceptible softness. I didn't rush over to her as usual. I just looked at her, took a deep breath, and spoke. Blake was here today. Vivian's movements instantly froze. She lowered her hand, looking at me, her eyes sharpening. "What did he want?" he said. I stared in her eyes, not missing a single flicker of emotion. "That you used to force me into our arranged marriage, stole my projects, cut off my funding, and even drove off my favorite college friend out of the country." My voice was calm, but a tight string pulled in my chest. Vivian's face slowly drained of color. She pressed her lips together, her eyes swirling with complex emotions. Anger, hurt, and a touch of, I knew it. Silence spread through the air, suffocatingly oppressive. She ultimately offered no explanation. She just looked away, her voice as cold as ice. "So, you believe him now?" My heart sank. "I want to hear it from you," I insisted. She scoffed, a deep, self-deprecating chill in her laugh. "Does it matter what I say? Haven't you already decided I'm a ruthless, malicious psycho?" She walked past me, heading straight for the stairs. "Vivian," I grabbed her wrist. Her wrist was thin, her skin cool. She sharply yanked her hand away, as if I'd touched her with something dirty. She turned, standing barefoot on the stairs, looking down at me, her eyes utterly cold and distant. "Ethan Cole, the amnesia game should end now. Whether you remember or not doesn't matter. What we have was a mistake from the beginning. This way it's fine." With that, she turned and walked upstairs without looking back. Her posture was resolute, carrying a desperate pride. I stood there, my hand still in midair, my fingertips seemingly retaining the cool sensation of her wrist. My heart felt like a gaping hole, and a cold wind howled through it. She didn't deny it. So, everything Blake said was true? Did I really hate her that much before? Then what was this strange attraction and dependence I felt now? A joke? My mind was a chaotic mess, like a soaked wad of cotton, heavy and suffocating. I stumbled back to my room, closed the door, and slid down the wall to sit on the floor. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting bright patterns on the floor, but it couldn't dispel the chill in my heart. What was I supposed to do? Believe those seemingly logical facts, or trust this uncontrollable instinct in my heart? That instinct that made me happy just seeing her and safe when I was near her. At dinner time, Maria knocked on my door. "Mr. Cole, dinner is ready." "Ms. Hayes is already in the dining room." I hesitated, then opened the door. What had to be faced had to be faced. In the dining room, Vivian was already seated at the head of the table. She had changed into casual clothes, her face bare, her hair loosely tied back, making her seem less sharp and more gentle than during the day. But her face was still pale, and her eyes were distant, showing no emotion. I walked over and sat opposite her. The table was set with exquisite dishes, steaming hot, but neither of us touched our chopsticks. The silence was awkwardly tense. Maria stood nearby, sensing the discomfort, anxiously wringing her hands. "Eat," Vivian finally said, her voice flat, picking up her chopsticks and slowly eating a green vegetable. I picked up my chopsticks too, but had no appetite. I pushed the rice around in my bowl, tasting nothing. Secretly glanced to her. She ate very little, her movements elegant, but she seemed to be going through the motions. Her eyelashes were lowered, casting small shadows beneath them, hiding her emotions. That college friend, I couldn't help but ask, my voice a little dry. Vivian's hand, holding her chopsticks, paused. She looked up at me, her eyes very still, a stillness that unnerved me. Chloe Davies, she stated the name precisely, a faint, mocking curve on her lips. What? Thinking of your first love? My heart felt a prick. I wasn't thinking of her, I said, looking at her. I just want to know, was Blake telling the truth? Did you really drive her out of the country? Vivian put down her chopsticks with a soft clink. She leaned back in her chair, hands clasped in front of her, her gaze calmly fixed on me, as if assessing a stranger. What if I said yes? My heart plummeted. Why? I heard my own voice ask. Why? She repeated, as if I'd asked something amusing, and gave a soft, chilling laugh. Because I didn't like the way she looked at you. Because I didn't like how close you two were. Because you are mine. Her tone was utterly calm, almost devoid of emotion, as if stating the simplest of facts. But each word was like a heavy hammer blow to my heart. Because you are mine. She had said that last night, too, with a tenacious madness. Hearing it now, a chill ran down my spine. So, Blake hadn't lied to me. She really was that kind of person. Controlling, ruthless. I looked at her, that impeccably exquisite face, now veiled by a strange shadow in my eyes. That inexplicable stirring and dependence in my heart wavered at that moment. Should I really keep my distance from her? Scared. Vivian looked at my expression, the mockery on her lips deepening. Do you think I'm a psycho now? She stood up, looking down at me, her eyes completely cold and distant. Ethan Cole, this is the real me. It was true then, it's true now, and it will be true always. So, stop looking at me like that. And stop coming close to me. With that, she turned and left the dining room, her back resolute. I sat alone in the empty dining room, looking at the almost untouched dishes on the table, feeling hollow, as if something important had shattered. That night, I didn't knock on her door again. She didn't come out either. We each stayed in our rooms, like two strangers living under the same roof. The mansion was eerily quiet. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, completely sleepless. Her words echoed repeatedly in my mind. Because you are mine. This is the real me. Stop coming close to me. Each word was like an ice pick, piercing painfully. But strangely, despite the coldness and confusion, I didn't feel aversion. In fact, in some corner of my heart, there was a twisted, almost perverse satisfaction. Did she do those things because she cared? The moment this crazy thought surfaced, it startled me. Was I not quite right either? I tossed and turned until late in the night, finally drifting into a fitful sleep. My dreams were bizarre and fragmented. One moment, Vivian's tenacious eyes said, "You are mine." The next, Blake's smug face appeared. Then a blurry figure in a white dress was crying. I woke up the next morning with a splitting headache. Stepping out of my room, the living room was empty. Maria said Vivian had left for the office early. She'd left instructions, saying she'd be busy with company matters and might be back late. So, I shouldn't wait up for her. I looked at the tightly closed master bedroom door, my heart feeling like it was stuffed with cotton. Was she avoiding me? Because we'd laid everything bare yesterday. She couldn't even bother with pretense anymore. The next few days, just as she'd said, she left early and returned late. We barely saw each other. Even when we occasionally crossed paths in the early morning or late at night, she'd only nod distantly before walking past, her eyes no longer lingering on me. That deliberate aloofness was more painful than any direct argument. The mansion was large, but it felt empty. Without her, it was desolate, like a luxurious cage. I tried to find things to do, read, watch movies, walk in the garden, but nothing sparked my interest. My mind kept drifting back to her, remembering her slightly flushed ears when she fed me breakfast, remembering her vulnerable expression when she had a nightmare, remembering her stiff body when I hugged her, and that imperceptible relaxation in the end. Those details, now recalling them, held a fatal attraction. Blake came to see me again once, bringing a few of my so-called old friends, saying they wanted to take me out to reminisce and have some fun. I looked at their smirking faces and just felt annoyed. No thanks, I refused flatly. Whoa, mister. Cole, turning over a new leaf? Has a missus got you on a leash? A man with dyed blonde hair winked. Heard Vivian Hayes is pretty ruthless. Guess it's true. Got our Ethan tamed. Another chimed in. Blake clapped me on the shoulder, saying earnestly, Buddy, don't be stubborn. Come out with us. Maybe you'll remember some good old times. Better than staring at a dragon lady all day. Dragon lady? I frowned, shaking off Blake's hand. She's not, I said coldly. Everyone froze. I'll decide what kind of person she is, I said, looking at them, each word deliberate. From now on, unless it's important, don't bother coming to see me. With that, I didn't look at their astonished faces and turned back into the mansion. I closed the door, shutting out the noise. Leaning against the door, I slowly exhaled. A strange sense of lightness filled me. Perhaps deep down, I wasn't like them. Is that why I was so miserable before my memory loss? So what about Vivian? Were the things she did to me out of love or purely possessiveness and control? I couldn't figure it out. That evening, I sat on the living room sofa, the lights off, only the faint glow of the TV screen playing a boring reality show. My mind, however, was silently counting the minutes. Almost 11. She still wasn't back. These past few days, she seemed even busier than before, the dark circles under her eyes more pronounced. Was she numbing herself with work? Or did she simply not want to see me? The sound of keys turning in the lock echoed from the entrance. My heart skipped a beat, and I instinctively straightened up. The door opened, and Vivian walked in. She seemed very tired, her steps a little unsteady. She leaned against the entrance wall, rubbing her temples. In the darkness, I couldn't make out her expression, only a blurry, slender silhouette. She didn't seem to notice me sitting in the living room, fumbling to turn on the light. Just then, her body swayed, as if she'd lost all strength about to fall. Careful! My body reacted faster than my brain. I sprang from the sofa in an instant, rushing over, and wrapped my arm around her waist before she could hit the floor. Her waist was so thin, I could easily encircle it with one hand. Her body was soft and warm, carrying the cool scent of the night air and a faint smell of wine. She'd been drinking? My heart tightened. Vivian was clearly startled. Her body instantly tensed, and she instinctively tried to push me away. Let go. Her voice was hoarse with drink and resistance. Don't move. I tightened my grip, pulling her closer into my embrace, my voice laced with a tension and anger I hadn't realized I felt. You drank? And this much? Did you come back alone? A barrage of questions tumbled out, laced with accusation. Vivian's struggle stopped. She looked up at me, illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the window. In the darkness, her eyes were strikingly bright, as if covered by a film of moisture, hazy and with a hint of hurt. None of your business, she muttered, turning her head away. It is my business. My temper flared inexplicably. You're my wife. If I don't look out for you, who will? The words burst out, undeniably possessive. We both froze. Vivian stared at me, her eyes complex. I looked at her face, so close, smelling the cool fragrance of her skin mingled with wine, my heart pounding like a drum. All the so-called truths, all the deliberate aloofness, seemed irrelevant at this moment. What mattered was that she was in my arms. What mattered was that I didn't want to let go. I took a deep breath and swept her up into my arms. Ah, she gasped, instinctively wrapping her arms around my neck. Ethan, what are you doing? Put me down. Shut up, I said, holding her steadily as I walked upstairs, my voice firm. Struggle again, and I'll drop you. She actually stopped struggling. She just buried her face in my chest, mumbling softly. Jerk. Her voice was very quiet, with a slight nasal quality, not like an insult at all, but rather like a whine. My heart instantly melted into a puddle. Carrying her, I walked into the master bedroom and gently placed her on the soft bed. She seemed genuinely exhausted, or perhaps the alcohol was really hitting her. Lying on the bed, she curled up, her eyes closed, her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings. I knelt by the bed, looking at her tranquil, sleeping face, my mind a complete mess. Which was the real her? The ruthless control freak? Or this woman who got drunk, became vulnerable, and unconsciously relied on me? Perhaps both. And I didn't seem to mind this side of her at all. In fact, I was a little obsessed. I reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. My fingertips touched her slightly warm skin. As if sensing it, she softly rubbed against my fingertips, mumbling something incoherently. Ethan, don't go. My heart felt like it had been violently struck. All hesitation and struggle crumbled at that moment. To hell with the past. To hell with the truth. All I knew was that the current me couldn't bear to let her go. I leaned down and pressed a soft kiss on her smooth forehead. I'm not leaving, I whispered a promise. I'm never leaving again. The morning sun filtered gently through the sheer curtains, softly illuminating the room. I woke up to a slight movement. Opening my eyes, I found myself still slumped by Vivian's bed. Having fallen asleep, her hand unconsciously held tightly in mine. She seemed to have just woken up as well, her eyes still a little hazy, trying to quietly pull her hand away. Seeing me awake, her movements froze. A deep blush quickly spread across her face, and her eyes darted away, unwilling to meet mine. Why are you sleeping here? Her voice was hoarse from sleep, a hint of panic in it. I looked at her rarely seen embarrassment, and the lingering gloom from last night's argument vanished instantly. Instead, a desire to tease her bubbled up. Not only did I not release her hand, I tightened my grip, my thumb gently caressing her delicate skin. Last night, a certain drunkard almost fell. I carried her back, I said, watching her cheeks grow redder, my lips curving into a smile. What? Use me and toss me aside? Vivian tried to pull her hand away forcefully, her voice regaining its usual coolness, though it lacked its usual intimidation. Who asked you to meddle? Let go. No way. I insisted playfully and even daringly brought her hand to my lips, gently kissing the back of it. It was cool and delicately smooth. You. She recoiled as if burned, sharply pulling her hand away and throwing back the covers, intending to get out of bed. Her ears were so red, they looked almost ready to bleed. Ow! Perhaps her movement was too sudden. She clutched her forehead, a frown of pain appearing. What's wrong? Headache. I immediately became concerned, standing up and steadying her shoulders. That's what you get for drinking so much. She shook off my hand, glaring at me. Don't pretend to care. Despite her words, she didn't rush to escape, just sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slightly. The sunlight outlined her slender neck and graceful collarbone, and the loose neckline of her casual top revealed a small patch of fair skin. My throat unconsciously tightened. The atmosphere held a subtle intimacy. I'll have Maria make some hangover soup, I said, averting my gaze, my voice a little dry. HM. She softly hummed, a silent acquiescence. I left the room, gave instructions to Maria, then went to the bathroom to soak a towel in warm water. Returning to the room, she was still sitting on the edge of the bed, head down, lost in thought. I walked over and handed her the warm towel. Apply this, it'll help. She hesitated, then took it, pressing it to her forehead. The warm steam softened her sharp features considerably. Neither of us mentioned yesterday's unpleasantness again, nor Blake's words. It was as if it had been a brief nightmare, dissipated with the morning sun. But I knew some things were different. After last night, my previous uncertainty had solidified. Regardless of the past, regardless of who she was, the current me just wanted to follow my heart. And my heart clearly told me it wanted to be close to her. At breakfast, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. I still sat next to her, serving her food. She no longer coldly refused, just ate in silence. Occasionally, I'd tell a not-so-funny joke, and while she wouldn't laugh, the corners of her lips would subtly twitch. That was enough. Are you going to the office today? I asked. She put down her juice glass, wiping her mouth with a napkin. There's an important merger I need to discuss. Is it complicated? I noticed a faint trace of fatigue in her brow. A bit. She didn't elaborate, but her tone was no longer as guarded as before. Don't overdo it, I said, looking at her earnestly. Remember to rest. She glanced at me, her eyes flickering, then softly hummed. I walked her to the door, watching her get into the car. Before the car started, she rolled down the window, looked at me, and seemed to hesitate. What is it? I leaned in to ask. Nothing. She looked away. Go inside. The car slowly drove off. I watched its retreating form, but my heart didn't feel hollow like it had a few days ago. Instead, there was a sense of contentment. Perhaps getting close to her was the only instinct I'd truly known since losing my memory. I was in a great mood all day. I took a walk in the garden, read for a bit, and even on a whim, went into the kitchen, wanted to learn how to make chicken Alfredo, a dish Vivian seemed to enjoy. I almost set the kitchen on fire, and Maria had to laughingly usher me out. "Mr. Cole, maybe you should rest. I can handle these tasks," Maria said, looking at the messy kitchen, a helpless smile on her face. I rubbed my nose, a little embarrassed. It seemed I truly had no talent for cooking. In the afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was from a private investigator. After my amnesia, I wasn't entirely passive. Driven by instinct, I had secretly hired a detective to investigate my past, especially my relationship with Vivian. Blake's words were like a thorn. I couldn't completely ignore them. I needed to know more. The detective called, saying he had some preliminary findings and wanted to meet to discuss them. I hesitated but agreed. We met at a secluded coffee shop. The detective was a sharp, competent-looking middle-aged man. He handed me a file folder. "Mr. Cole, these are some of the things we've found so far." He lowered his voice. "Regarding your arranged marriage with Ms. Hayes and Ms. Chloe Davies." I took the folder, my fingers tightening slightly. "Just tell me," I said, not opening it. The detective nodded. "According to our current investigation, your arranged marriage with Ms. Hayes was indeed arranged by both families. Initially, you seemed very resistant. You publicly expressed your displeasure on multiple occasions. My heart sank. As for Ms. Chloe Davies," the detective paused, seemingly choosing his words carefully. "She did leave the country a year ago, her paperwork handled very hastily. We found that before she left, a substantial sum was transferred into her account from an offshore company. The source of funds, we can't directly trace it back to Hayes Industries yet, but it's highly suspicious. Furthermore," the detective glanced around, lowering his voice even further, "we found that sometime before your accident, you seemed to be secretly gathering evidence of alleged commercial irregularities by Hayes Industries." I snapped my head up, my pupils constricting. What? Gathering evidence of Hayes Industries' irregularities? The old me was doing something like that? Was it to resist the arranged marriage? Or to completely ruin the Hayes family? If this was true, did Vivian know? Were her so-called compulsion and control actions understandable in that context? My heart rate suddenly accelerated, my mind a chaotic mess. "Anything else?" I asked, my voice dry. "Just this for now," the detective said. "More in-depth investigation will take time, and it seems someone is deliberately covering things up." Someone deliberately covering things up? Was it Vivian? I held the seemingly lightweight folder, yet it felt heavy as 1,000 pounds. Inside, it likely held the truth that would overturn all my current perceptions. Back at the mansion, I locked myself in my room. I stared at the folder on the table, unable to open it. Fear. For the first time, I clearly felt fear. Fear that it would confirm Blake's words. Fear that it would prove Vivian was a ruthless and scrupulous person. But even more, fear that it would prove the old me had deliberately tried to harm her. If that were the case, wouldn't my current uncontrollable attraction be an even greater irony and hurt for her? Footsteps sounded outside. Vivian was back. I took a deep breath and shoved the folder into the bottom drawer of my desk. Not yet. At least, not until I sorted out my own thoughts could I let her know. I opened the door and walked out. Vivian was standing in the living room, seemingly waiting for me. She was wearing a champagne-colored suit today, highlighting her porcelain skin and exceptional elegance. But there was a trace of undeniable fatigue on her face. "You're back." I walked up to her, trying to keep my voice natural. "Mm." She glanced at me, a hint of inquiry in her eyes. "You went out this afternoon?" My heart skipped a beat, but my face remained impassive. Yeah, just walked around a bit, felt restless. She didn't press further, just rubbed her temples. "The merger talks aren't going well." "What happened?" I naturally took the bag from her hand, as if I'd done it countless times. She seemed to pause, glanced at me, but didn't refuse. "The other parties suddenly changed their terms, demanding a higher price," she said, sitting on the sofa, her voice laced with annoyance. "Someone seems to be backing them. Someone behind the scenes, causing trouble." I immediately thought of Blake, or was a mess left by the old me? "Do you need my help?" He sat beside her, asking softly. She looked at me in surprise, as if I'd suggested something preposterous. You? The distrust in her eyes felt like a tiny prick. Right in her eyes, the current me was just an amnesiac, perhaps even someone who had tried to harm her. What ability or right did I have to help her? I suppressed the bitter taste in my mouth and smiled. Maybe I'll get lucky and offer some good advice? She looked at me for a few seconds, then finally shook her head, her voice softening slightly. No need. I can handle it. It was that same strong, distant self-reliance. I looked at her profile, a powerful urge surging through me. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to shield her, prevent anyone from hurting her. This urge was so strong, so real. It almost drowned out the unsettling truths I had just learned. Vivian, I said, using her first name. She flinched, turning sharply to look at me, her eyes filled with shock and a hint of panic. This was the first time I'd used her first name since my amnesia. What is it? Her voice was a little shaky. I looked into her eyes and said with utmost sincerity, no matter what happened before, no matter who I was, who you were, the me right now, I'm here. My desire to be good to you, it's real. So could you try to lean on me just a little, even just a little bit? Vivian stared at me, her lips slightly parted, as if she'd lost all words. Her usually cool and composed eyes swirled with intensely complex emotions. Shock, bewilderment, disbelief, and a trace of tenderness after being deeply moved. After a long silence, so long I thought she wouldn't answer, she very, very softly, almost inaudibly, and it was like a feather gently landing on my heart, spreading a circle of tender ripples. That was enough. I looked at her slightly flushed ear tips, and the gloom in my heart from the folder was instantly dispelled by this subtle response. Sunlight streamed in again, warm and inviting. That almost inaudible HM was like a pebble dropped into a lake, creating ripple after ripple in my heart. I looked at her slightly flushed profile and her evasive gaze, my heart melting into a puddle of tenderness. The ice mountain seemed to have cracked, letting in a sliver of sunlight meant just for me. This was enough. At least, she was no longer a porcupine, aiming all her quills at me. At dinner, the atmosphere was noticeably different. I still served her food, making small talk. While she remained quiet, she occasionally responded, or her lips would subtly twitch when I told a silly joke. Under the soft light, her features softened considerably, no longer carrying the icy reserve from before. Is that merger deal really that tricky? I asked casually, but my mind was on what the detective had said that afternoon. Someone was stirring up trouble behind the scenes. Who could it be? Vivian's hand, holding her chopsticks, paused. She looked up at me, seeming a little surprised that I was still asking about it. It's all right, she said, her tone even, but the fleeting seriousness in her eyes didn't escape me. I can handle it. That phrase again, carrying her unique pride and stubbornness. I didn't press further. Some boundaries needed to be crossed slowly. Pushing too hard would only make her retreat back into her shell. After dinner, she didn't immediately go back to her study to work. Instead, she sat on the living room sofa, holding her tablet, her brows slightly furrowed. I went over and sat next to her. Her body stiffened for a moment, but she didn't move away. What are you looking at? I peered over. It was information about the merger, dense with data and terms. The other party is Horizon Tech. I saw the company logo on the document, a somewhat familiar symbol. Vivian looked at me in surprise. You know this company? I rummaged through my blank memories, shaking my head. I don't remember, but it feels a little familiar, especially that logo. I felt like I'd seen it somewhere. Vivian's eyes darkened slightly, but she said nothing, returning to her document. I watched her focused profile, the lamplight casting small shadows on her long eyelashes, her nose bridged delicate, her lips a natural rosy red. So beautiful. I couldn't get enough of looking at her. That urge to do something for her grew stronger and stronger. The file folder in the drawer, like a hot iron, seared my heart. What role had I played before my amnesia? The next day, I found an excuse to go out and met the private investigator again. It was the same secluded coffee shop. I need to know more about Horizon Tech and who exactly is trying to sabotage Hayes Industries. I stated directly, a coldness in my voice I hadn't realized was there. The detective looked somewhat troubled. Mister, Cole, the other party is very cautious. The clues are extremely clean. Horizon Tech itself isn't the problem. The issue is the massive influx of funds that suddenly came into it. The source is very hidden, as if laundered through multiple offshore shell companies. Offshore shell companies. I remembered what the detective had said earlier about the suspicious large sum in Chloe Davies' account. Could there be a connection? Keep digging, I said firmly. The money trail, associated individuals, every detail. I want it all. That will take time and more resources. The detective looked hesitant. Money isn't an issue. I looked into his eyes. I need results as soon as possible. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt a heavy weight in my heart. The fog seemed to be getting thicker. The old me, Vivian, Chloe Davies, Blake Harrison, and now this suddenly appearing Horizon Tech. What intricate web connected us all? It was afternoon by the time I returned to the mansion. To my surprise, Vivian was home. She sat on the white swing chair in the garden, wearing a simple cotton maxi dress, a book on her lap. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling her with light. A gentle breeze stirred strands of her hair. Quiet, beautiful like a painting. I softened my footsteps as I approached. She seemed absorbed in her reading, unaware of my presence. It wasn't until my shadow fell over her that she suddenly looked up. Seeing it was me, the wariness in her eyes instantly vanished, replaced by an almost imperceptible relaxation. You're back. She closed her book, her tone very natural, as if the estrangement and arguments between us had never existed. Yeah. I sat in the empty spot beside her, and the swing gently swayed. Why are you back so early today? Finished most of my work, taking a little break, she said, turning her head slightly, avoiding my overly direct gaze. Her ears were faintly pink in the sunlight. My heart felt like it was being lightly tickled by a feather. Is the book good? I made conversation. It's all right. She put the book aside. It was a foreign novel. We sat side by side on the swing, neither of us speaking. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle. The air was filled with the scent of grass and faint flowers, and her familiar, cool fragrance. This was what perfect peace must feel like. I wished it could always be like this. That merger deal. I hesitated, then spoke. If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word. Vivian turned to look at me, her eyes somewhat complex. Why are you suddenly so interested in the company's affairs? Why? Because I hated seeing her bear everything alone. Because I wanted to prove that the current me was different from that old jerk. Because I wanted to be someone she could rely on. But those words, when they reached my lips, changed. You're my wife. Isn't it natural for me to care? I looked at her, stating matter-of-factly. Vivian's cheeks flushed visibly. She glared at me, her voice tinged with reproach. Who's your wife? Don't call me that. The law says so. Why can't I? I grinned, leaning closer. Wifey, wifey, wifey. Shut up. She angrily reached out to cover my mouth, but I seized the opportunity to grab her wrist. Her wrist was slender, her skin delicate and cool. I tightened my grip on her hand, not letting her pull away. Our eyes met. Her gaze held panic, embarrassment, and a hint of a stirring I deliberately ignored. Sunlight danced in her clear pupils, sparkling like shattered diamonds. My heart rate, once again, uncontrollably accelerated. Vivian, I said, looking at her, my voice unconsciously deepening. I told you my desire to be good to you, it's real. She stared at me, forgetting to struggle. The air seemed to solidify at that moment. Only the mingled sounds of our breathing and our rapidly beating hearts remained. I slowly leaned down, closer to her, wanted to kiss those tempting lips so close to mine, just as my lips were about to touch hers. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Cole, you have visitors. Maria's voice came from nearby, shattering the intimate atmosphere. Vivian, startled as if suddenly awakened, sharply pulled her hand away and stood up from the swing, her cheeks flushed, her eyes darting away. Who is it? She smoothed her slightly disheveled hair, her voice regaining its usual coolness, though it still held an almost imperceptible tremor. My heart felt a pang of disappointment, but I had no choice but to stand up too. It's Mr. Blake Harrison, Maria replied. Blake Harrison? Why was he here again? I frowned, a strong sense of aversion rising within me. Vivian's face instantly turned cold as well. That rare touch of softness vanished, and her eyes were once again covered by a layer of ice. "Let him in," she said faintly, turning towards the living room. Her back was straight, poised for defense. I looked at her sudden change of attitude, feeling like something was stuck in my throat. Blake's appearance was like a spoiled apple in a fine basket. The burgeoning intimacy and softened atmosphere between us instantly reverted to its original state. Blake was still his usual nonchalant self, wearing a flashy shirt, and as soon as he entered, he swaggered in, shouting, "Well, while everyone's here, guess I came a bad time." His gaze lingered between Vivian and me, openly curious and gloating. Vivian sat on the main sofa, watching him expressionlessly. "Do you need something? Can't I just come see my buddy?" Blake plopped down on the sofa next to me, hooking an arm over my shoulder, which I subtly shrugged off. He didn't seem to care, grinning at Vivian. "Ms. Hayes, heard you're working on the Horizon Tech merger? Not going too well, huh?" Vivian's eyes narrowed, and the atmosphere around her instantly became dangerous. "How do you know?" "Uffed. The circles are small. Everyone knows what's going on," Blake said, crossing his legs, a hint of smugness in his voice. "I even know that the people giving you trouble have some serious backing." My heart plummeted. Was it him after all? Or related to him? Vivian scoffed. "Don't worry your head about it." "Oh, come on. We're practically friends." Blake leaned in, lowering his voice, but his eyes darted to me. "Ms. Hayes, why go through all this trouble? Just say the word, agree to the condition I mentioned before, and I might be able to put in a good word for you with Horizon Tech." "Condition? What condition?" I looked at Vivian. Her face was ashen, her fingers tightly gripping the armrest of the sofa, knuckles white. A sudden anger flared in my chest. This Blake, he really had ulterior motives. He dared to take advantage of her vulnerability to threaten Vivian. I abruptly stood up, shielding Vivian, and looked coldly at Blake. "Blake, you're not welcome here. Please leave." Blake froze, seemingly not expecting me to directly kick him out. The smile vanished from his face. He stood up, his eyes dark and menacing as he looked at me. "Ethan, have you really been brainwashed by this woman? You forgot how she used to treat you." "That's my business," I retorted, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Now get out." Fine. Blake scoffed in anger, pointing at me. "You got guts. Just you wait." He glared fiercely at Vivian and me, then slammed the door shut as he left. The living room returned to silence, but the atmosphere was more oppressive than before. I turned to look at Vivian. She was still sitting on the sofa, head bowed, her long hair obscuring her expression, but I knew she was angry, or rather, suppressing her rage. "What was the condition he mentioned?" I asked softly. Vivian suddenly lifted her head, her eyes sharp as knives, filled with an offended fury and icy coldness. "That's none of your business." She stood up, not even glancing at me, and walked straight upstairs. "Ethan, mind your own business." Her voice was like an ice-cold knife, piercing deeply into my heart. I was left alone in the living room. The air still carried Blake's sickening cologne scent and the cold current from Vivian's abrupt departure. "Mind your own business." Her words were like an ice pick, stabbing my heart, spreading a chill through my limbs. It was always like this. Every time I thought I'd gotten a little closer, I was unceremoniously pushed away. That slightly open door to her heart had slammed shut again. I frustratedly ran my hands through my hair, my chest tight with a suffocating feeling. What was the condition Blake mentioned? Why was Vivian's reaction so extreme? What role had the old me played in this tangled mess? The file folder in my drawer was like Pandora's box, tempting me to open it, yet terrified of seeing a truth I couldn't bear. I stood in the empty living room for a long time, until the sun set and dusk enveloped everything. Maria cautiously came to ask if I wanted dinner. I waved her off, having no appetite. I turned and went upstairs. Passing the master bedroom, the door was tightly shut, no sound coming from within. I raised my hand, wanting a knock, but ultimately let it fall uselessly. Going in now would only lead to a bigger argument, seemingly pointless. I returned to my room, closed the door, and slid down the wall to sit on the floor. In the darkness, my senses became exceptionally sharp. I could hear my own slightly ragged breathing, feel my heart's dull thudding. And, faintly from the next room, I heard barely suppressed sobs. Very soft, very faint, broken. like a wounded animal, licking its wounds alone in a deserted corner. She was crying? My heart twisted sharply, as if gripped by an invisible hand, aching almost to the point of suffocation. The Vivian Hayes who was always calm, composed, and impeccably strong in public was now secretly crying. Was it because of Blake's threat? Or because of my helplessness? A wave of self-reproach and heartache washed over me. I hated my amnesia, hated that I couldn't share her burden, hated that I might even be one of the sources of her pain. I stood up, pacing restlessly in my room. No, I couldn't just watch her endure everything alone. Regardless of the past, regardless of whether she accepted it, the current me had to do something. I pulled out my phone and called a private investigator again. More money, fastest possible speed. I need to know all of Blake Harrison's recent movements and what that condition he mentioned is. My voice held a coldness I hadn't realized was there. Hanging up, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my swirling emotions. Then, I left my room and went downstairs to the kitchen. Maria was tidying up, looking surprised to see me. "Mr. Cole, do you need anything?" "I'll do it," I said, rolling up my sleeves. "I want to cook something." "Oh, should I do it?" Maria hesitated. "It's fine, I want to personally make her some soothing warm milk," I said, looking at Maria, my tone insistent. "Can you teach me?" Maria looked at me, a flicker of emotion in her eyes, then finally nodded. "All right, I'll teach you." Under Maria's guidance, I clumsily heated the milk, then carefully added a little honey. My movements were awkward, and I even almost knocked over the sugar jar. But eventually, a cup of fragrant warm milk was ready. I carried the tray upstairs. Stopping at the master bedroom door, I took a deep breath and gently knocked. The sobbing inside instantly ceased. After several seconds, her voice, thick with a nasal quality and deliberately cold, came from within. "Who is it?" "It's me," I said softly. "I heated you some milk." A brief silence. "No need." I had expected her to refuse. "I'll leave it by the door," I said, not insisting on entering, just gently placing the tray on the floor beside the door. "Remember to drink it." With that, I didn't linger and returned to my room. I closed the door but didn't leave. I leaned against the door, holding my breath, carefully listening to the sounds outside. After about 5 or 6 minutes, I heard the subtle sound of the adjacent room's door being gently opened. Very light, very careful. Then the faint clink of the tray being picked up. The door was gently closed again. My racing heart settled slightly. She accepted it, even if it was just an insignificant cup of milk. It was a good start. That night, I didn't sleep well. My dreams were still fragmented, filled with Vivian's cold gaze, Blake's smug face, and a blurry figure in a white dress crying. I woke up very early the next morning. When I went downstairs, Vivian was already in the dining room. She was dressed in a sharp black pantsuit, her makeup meticulously applied, once again the impeccably poised CEO of Hayes Industries. Only her eyes were still slightly swollen. Even foundation couldn't completely hide it. Seeing me, her eyes flickered, then quickly darted away as she lowered her gaze to the financial newspaper in her hand. "Morning," I greeted her sitting opposite her. "Morning," she responded softly, her voice a little hoarse. Maria brought breakfast. We ate in silence. The atmosphere was subtly awkward. I noticed she drank milk today. It was the usual kind Maria prepared, not the one I'd heated last night. I felt a tiny pang of disappointment, but quickly shrugged it off. Being able to calmly sit and have breakfast together was already a huge improvement from yesterday's tension. Today, I hesitated, starting to speak. "I'll be very busy today." She interrupted me immediately, her tone deliberately distant. "Don't wait up for me." "Okay," I nodded. She quickly finished breakfast, picked up her bag and coat, and stood to leave. At the door, she paused. Without turning around, her voice drifted softly back. "The milk, thank you." Then she opened the door and quickly walked out like a gust of wind. I stood there, stunned, until the door clicked shut, then slowly came back to myself. A smile, uncontrollable, spread across my face. She said thank you, even though her voice was so soft, so quick, as if she was afraid I would hear. But my heart, because of those 2 words, felt like it was soaking in warm honey, swelling with sweetness. All day, my mood was like a roller coaster, soaring from rock bottom to the clouds. She was slowly accepting my kindness. Even if her steps were small, and slow, but she was moving forward. That was enough. In the afternoon, I received an encrypted email from the detective. I opened it to find several photos and a brief report. The photos showed Blake Harrison meeting with an unfamiliar man in various locations. Their body language suggested a close relationship. The report indicated that the unfamiliar man was a minor shareholder in Horizon Tech, and Blake had recently transferred large sums of money into this man's offshore accounts. More importantly, the detective had discovered that Blake had been frequently contacting some long-serving board members of Cole Enterprises. Cole Enterprises, my father's company. What was Blake trying to do? Combining this with the condition he mentioned yesterday, a vague and terrifying hypothesis formed in my mind. Was he trying to use Cole Enterprises' influence to target Vivian? To force her to agree to some condition? That bastard. I clenched my fist, my knuckles turning white. I had to stop him quickly. But the current me had amnesia, no real say in Cole Enterprises. Directly intervening would likely backfire. What to do? I forced myself to calm down, carefully piecing together the clues. Blake, Horizon Tech, Cole Enterprises old guard. Perhaps I could start with that minor shareholder of Horizon Tech. If he flipped and testified against Blake, a plan slowly formed in my mind. It was risky, but worth a try. That night, Vivian indeed returned very late. I sat in the living room waiting for her, the lights off. Close to midnight, she finally walked in, her steps heavy with fatigue. Seeing me sitting in the dark, she jumped, instinctively taking a step back. Why aren't you asleep yet? She turned on the entrance light, frowning at me, her voice tinged with exhaustion and impatience. Waiting for you. I stood up and walked toward her. Under the light, her face looked terrible, with deep circles of fatigue under her eyes. Something wrong. She walked around me, intending to get a glass of water. Any progress on the Horizon Tech situation? I asked, following her. Her back stiffened, and her voice turned cold. I told you it's none of your business. What if I told you I could help? I said softly, watching her pour water. She spun around abruptly, water splashing from the glass. You help me? She scoffed as if she'd heard the biggest joke, a mocking curve on her lips. Ethan Cole, how are you going to help me? With your identity as the Cole Enterprises heir? Or with this inexplicable sympathy you have after losing your memory? Her eyes were sharp as knives, filled with the anger of being underestimated and a deep sense of helplessness. I'm not sympathizing with you. I met her gaze, utterly serious. I just don't want to see you get bullied. Who can bully me? She sneered, but her eyes flickered. Blake Harrison, I stated directly, and the people behind him. Vivian's face instantly changed. She stared at me, her voice a hiss through gritted teeth. What do you know? I know he's causing trouble behind the scenes. I know he wants to use Cole Enterprises to pressure you, to force you to agree to some condition. I took a step closer to her. Tell me, what is that condition? Vivian looked at me, so close, her breathing quickening. Her eyes were filled with struggle, anger, and a hint of being exposed and flustered. It has nothing to do with you. She pushed me away abruptly, the water glass falling to the floor with a sharp crash. Water splattered on her pant leg and my slippers. How can it have nothing to do with me? I also flared up a bit, grabbing her wrist, my grip unintentionally tightening. You're my wife. Someone is bullying my wife, and you're telling me it has nothing to do with me? Wife. Vivian seemed provoked by the word, suddenly looking up, her eyes red, her voice filled with suppressed sobs and despair. Ethan, honestly, when have you ever truly treated me as your wife? Before your amnesia, you saw me as a viper, avoiding me at all costs. After your amnesia, you're only still here because you have nowhere else to go, because of guilt, because you pity me. What's the point of saying all this now? Her accusations, like knives, brutally carved at my heart. So this was what she truly believed. So my closeness to her was just an act of charity and pity. No, that's not it. I wanted to retort, wanted to tell her it wasn't true. But those lost memories, like an insurmountable chasm, lay between us, making all my explanations seem so weak and pathetic. I looked at her red-rimmed eyes and trembling body, all words caught in my throat. Only boundless heartache and regret remained. I released her hand, slowly raising mine, wanting to wipe away the tears from her eyes. But she recoiled like a startled rabbit, backing against the cold wall, looking at me with apprehension. "Don't touch me." Her voice was very soft, but carried a heart-piercing pain. My hand froze in midair. My heart felt as if it had been utterly shattered by her words. We stood there, facing each other. The air was thick with the dampness of spilled water and her unspoken sorrow. After who knows how long, she took a deep breath, forcibly composed herself, and walked around me towards the stairs. Her steps were unsteady, her silhouette so thin it ached my heart. As she stepped on the stairs, I heard her say very, very softly, as if to herself, or perhaps as a final declaration, "My business is none of your concern. And you can't handle it anyway. And you can't handle it anyway." This sentence, like a poisoned icicle, pierced the softest part of my heart, instantly freezing all my blood. I watched her silhouette disappear around the stairwell, her resolute posture seemingly severing the last faint connection between us. On the floor lay shattered glass and winding water stains, like our relationship now, a complete mess. I stood there, my hands and feet icy cold, my chest feeling like a gaping hole, cold wind howling through it. Can't handle it, right? An amnesiac who couldn't even figure out his own past. How could he so arrogantly claim to protect her? How could he meddle in her affairs? A profound sense of helplessness and frustration engulfed me. I didn't even have the courage to follow her, because I didn't know what else to say. Any words, in the face of brutal reality and blank memories, would seem pale and ridiculous. I stood in the living room all night, like a frozen statue, until the sky began to lighten and the first rays of dawn appeared. Maria came down to prepare breakfast, startled to see me. "Mr. Cole, you didn't sleep all night?" she asked, looking at my bloodshot eyes and haggard face with concern. I shook my head, my voice hoarse. "I'm fiending." I turned, dragging my stiff body upstairs. Passing the master bedroom, the door was still closed. I returned to my room, splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear my head. The man in the mirror was pale, his eyes hollow, a shadow of stubble on his chin, looking utterly disheveled. This was me, a useless man who couldn't even protect his own wife. No, not like this. I vigorously wiped my face, my eyes hardening with determination. She said, "Don't meddle," and I shouldn't. She told me to stay away, and I should really stay away. The old me might have, but the current me, no. Since words couldn't earn her trust, then I would prove it with actions. I pulled out my phone and called the detective again. "I need you to speed up the investigation on everything I asked for." My voice was hoarse from sleepless night, but unusually calm. "Also, arrange a meeting for me with Mark Jenkins, that minor shareholder of Horizon Tech." "Mr. Cole, this..." The detective hesitated. "Mark Jenkins is Blake Harrison's man. He won't be easy to meet, and it could be dangerous." "Dangerous?" I pulled a cold smile. "Do as I say." Hanging up, I looked at the sky gradually brightening outside my window. The gloom in my heart from Vivian's rejection was replaced by a sense of desperate resolve. Since I couldn't breach her defenses from within, I would dismantle the problem from the outside. Blake Harrison, Horizon Tech, the Cole Enterprises old guard. I would clear these obstacles from her path, no matter the method. Vivian had left early, without even eating breakfast. We tacitly avoided seeing each other. That was fine. Meeting now, aside from arguments and mutual hurt, was meaningless. I needed time to set everything in motion. All day, I stayed in my room, directing things remotely via phone and email. More evidence poured in from the detective about Blake Harrison's collusion with some Cole Enterprises elders, financial transactions, meeting photos, even a few blurry audio recordings. It seemed Blake had spent a lot to oppose Vivian and had left many weaknesses. As for Mark Jenkins, after the detective offered sufficient bait, a sum far greater than Blake's promise, and hints that he could help him escape Blake's control, he finally agreed to meet. The meeting was set for 8 p.m. at a private club on the outskirts of the city, known for its discretion. Hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath. Success or failure, it all came down to this. At 7:30 p.m., I changed into an inconspicuous black casual outfit, put on a hat and mask, and quietly left the mansion through the back door. I told no one, not even Vivian. In the private room at the club, the air was thick with smoke. Mark Jenkins was a middle-aged man in his 40s, slightly overweight, with shifty eyes, displaying the shrewdness and caution typical of a businessman. He seemed surprised to see me alone, but mostly wary. "Mr. Cole, is it really you?" he asked, scrutinizing me, his tone tentative. "I heard you were unwell, recuperating at home. A minor accident, nothing serious." I sat opposite him, removed my mask, and looked at him calmly. "Mr. Jenkins, let's skip the pleasantries and get straight to business." Mark chuckled dryly, rubbing his hands. "Mr. Cole, you're a straight shooter. I wonder why you call me here. Blake Harrison instructed you to sabotage Hayes Industries in the Horizon Tech merger and to demand a higher price, correct?" I stated directly. Mark's face changed, his eyes instantly panicked. "Mr. Cole, you can't just say things like that. Mr. Harrison and I are just casual friends." "Are you?" I pulled out my phone, displayed the photos the detective had sent, and slid it across the table to him. "These financial transactions and your meetings at the private club, are those also just casual friends?" The photos clearly showed Mark and Blake with their arms around each other, and bank statements with large transfer records. Mark's forehead broke out in a cold sweat, his face pale. "Mr. Cole, what do you mean by this?" "My meaning is simple." I leaned forward, my gaze fixed on him, an undeniable pressure in my voice. "Stop causing trouble for Hayes Industries. Cooperate with Vivian Hayes on the merger. And give me the evidence you have regarding Blake Harrison's use of Cole Enterprises resources to suppress Hayes Industries." Mark violently shook his head, as if he'd heard something terrifying. "No, absolutely not. Blake Harrison won't let me get away with it." "Mr. Cole, you don't understand. Blake, what did he promise you? Shares in Cole Enterprises? Or a cut of the profits if Hayes Industries merger succeeds?" I interrupted him, my voice cold. "Whatever he can give you, I can give you too, double. And I can guarantee your safety, help you completely escape Blake's control." I pulled out a pre-written check and pushed it across to Mark. The amount on it was enough to tempt him. Mark stared at the check, his eyes filled with struggle and greed, but even more fear. "Mr. Cole, it's not about the money. Blake, he has leverage over me. And he has people inside Cole Enterprises. He's very influential. I can't afford to offend him." "Leverage?" I raised an eyebrow. "Is it the massive debt you accumulated in overseas casinos? Or is it your embezzlement of Horizon Tech funds?" Mark trembled, looking at me as if he'd seen a ghost, his lips quivering, unable to speak a word. "Blake can use that leverage, and so can I said, my voice low but carrying a deadly threat. "But the difference is, Blake will only squeeze every last drop of usefulness out of you, then discard you like trash. I, on the other hand, can help you resolve these problems, let you take the money, and disappear." I paused, delivering the final, decisive blow. "Or you can choose to continue following Blake and see if he kills you first, or if Vivian Hayes tracks you both down and sends you to prison. Don't forget, you should have heard about Vivian's methods." Mark's psychological defenses completely crumbled. He collapsed onto the chair, his face ashen, sweat soaking his shirt. I agree," he stammered, as if using all his strength. "The evidence. I have some of it, but there's more on Blake's computer. I can help you get it." "Good." I put away my phone and pushed the check further towards him. "This is a down payment. After the job is done, the other half, along with the promise to clear your debts and troubles, will be fulfilled." It was late when I left the club. The cool night air on my face cleared my muddled head considerably. Things went more smoothly than expected. Mark Jenkins' betrayal meant a crack had opened in Blake's scheme. Next, it was about getting irrefutable evidence and then delivering the fatal blow. I got into the car, rubbed my temples, feeling a wave of exhaustion, but also a strange sense of fulfillment. This was fighting for her, for the woman who was outwardly difficult, but privately bore everything alone. Back at the mansion, it was completely silent. I tiptoed upstairs. Passing the master bedroom, I saw a faint light under the door. She wasn't asleep yet? Was she worried about the merger? Or about last night's argument? I stood by the door, hesitating, but ultimately didn't knock. What would I say if I went in now? Tell her I met Mark Jenkins behind her back? Tell her I was secretly dealing with Blake Harrison? She wouldn't believe me. She would only think I was playing some other trick, or worse, that I was meddling, underestimating her abilities. Better to wait until things had a clear outcome. I silently returned to my room. Showered, lay down. My body was exhausted, but my mind was unusually clear. The plan had been set in motion, like a fully drawn bow. There was no turning back. Only success was an option. The next few days were calm. Vivian still left early and returned late. Our encounters were rare, and even then, we just nod and pass each other by, like two strangers sharing a house. But I knew this was just the calm before the storm. Mark Jenkins' progress was smooth. Through some technical means and internal connections, he gradually sent back evidence of Blake Harrison's collusion with the Cole Enterprises elders, their intent to manipulate the merger, and their plans to further carve up Hayes Industries after its success. It wasn't completely comprehensive yet, but it was enough to land Blake in deep trouble. Meanwhile, through the detective, I began secretly contacting some shareholders and executives within Cole Enterprises who were still neutral or dissatisfied with Blake and his cronies. The old me, it seemed, wasn't entirely without support within Cole Enterprises. I had just been deliberately forgotten and marginalized. Now it was time to set things right. The night before a storm is always particularly calm. I knew Blake and his backers wouldn't sit idly by. Sure enough, that evening, I received a tearful call from Vivian's assistant. Mr. Cole, it's terrible. Ms. Hayes. Ms. Hayes is missing. My heart stopped instantly. What do you mean, missing? My voice was hoarse with extreme fear. This afternoon, Ms. Hayes said she was going to meet a client, and then we couldn't reach her. Her phone is off. Her location is gone. We've searched every possible place. Nothing. Mr. Cole, what do we do? Could it be Blake Harrison? I couldn't hear the rest of what she said. My mind buzzed, as if a bomb had exploded. Blake Harrison, that scumbag. He actually dared to touch Vivian. Overwhelming rage and terror instantly engulfed me. I forced myself to calm down, my fingers trembling as I dialed Blake's number. It rang for a long time before he finally picked up. Blake's smug, cold voice came from the other end. The background noise was chaotic, like he was at some entertainment venue. Well, Mr. Cole, what made you call me? Is your little darling missing? Got you worried? My fingernails dug deep into my palm, almost drawing blood. Blake, where are you? My voice was cold enough to freeze. Where I am doesn't matter, Blake scoffed. What matters is your precious wife is in my hands now. If you want her safe, you'll do exactly as I say. What do you want? I gritted out. It's simple. Blake's voice was filled with triumphant arrogance. First, immediately tell your damn detective to stop investigating and hand over all original evidence. Second, publicly announce that all previous accusations against me and the Cole Enterprises elders were just your delusional ramblings after your amnesia. Third, he paused, his tone turning lewd and malicious. Kneel before me, count out 3 times, and beg me to release your woman. My chest heaved violently, rage threatening to consume me. That animal. Blake, if you touch one hair on her head, I will make sure you die a miserable death. I spat the words through clenched teeth. Ha ha ha. Blake burst into maniacal laughter. Still tough when you're facing death. Ethan, I'll give you an hour to think. In an hour, if I don't get a satisfactory answer, you can prepare to collect your pretty wife's corpse. Oh no, wait, maybe before that, my buddies will have a good take care of her. The phone was slammed down. The cold dial tone was like a blunt knife, cutting back and forth in my heart. I stood there, icy cold, my blood seeming to congeal. Fear, like countless cold hands, gripped my heart tightly, almost suffocating me. Vivian, she must be terrified right now. Blake is a psycho, capable of anything. No, I have to save her. Now, immediately. I burst out the door, started the car, and floored the accelerator. The car shot forward like an arrow from a bow. My destination, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The detective had previously identified it as a place Blake often used for unsavory dealings. He had to be there. The engine roared under the strain, the speedometer needle swinging wildly to the right, almost beyond its limit. The scenery outside blurred into indistinct streaks as we sped past. My heart felt like it was being crushed by an invisible hand, each beat bringing a tearing pain. Vivian, that bastard Blake, if he dares to lay a hand on you, I swear I will tear him limb from limb. The anonymous text message's address was my only lifeline. I clung to it, rushing desperately towards Pier 3 on the west side. Countless thoughts flashed chaotically through my mind. Who sent the text? Was it a trap? Was Vivian really there? But no matter what, I had no choice. Even if there was only 1 in 1,000 chance, I had to go. The pier at night was desolate and silent. Only the salty sea wind howling past. Huge cargo ships, like sleeping monsters, cast long, dark shadows. Following the tech's instructions, I quietly parked my car far from Warehouse B and cut the engine. Pushing open the car door, the cold night wind instantly filled my clothes, making me shiver, but also slightly cooling my racing blood. I couldn't be reckless. I had to stay calm. Vivian's safety depended on me. I crouched low, using the shadows of the containers, and cautiously approached Warehouse B, number 7. The warehouse was large, its rusty iron door slightly ajar, a faint light glowing within. Rough male laughter faintly reached my ears. My heart clenched. They were here. I held my breath, peered through the door crack, and looked inside. In the center of the warehouse, Vivian was tied to a chair, her mouth taped shut, her hair a bit disheveled, her face ashen. But her eyes, still cool and stubborn, glared fiercely at the men in front of her, showing no hint of fear. Blake Harrison stood with his back to me, smugly swirling a glass of red wine. Around him were 4 or 5 shady-looking men, their eyes vulgar and malicious as they ogled Vivian. Ms. Hayes, never thought you'd see the day, huh? Blake's voice was nauseatingly triumphant. Always so arrogant. Never even looked at me. He leaned down, reaching out to touch Vivian's face. Vivian sharply turned her head away, her eyes like poisoned daggers, fiercely cutting into him. Heh, still feisty. Blake didn't get angry, but laughed even more wildly. I like him like that. We'll see how tough you are later. He straightened up and winked at the man beside him. Guys, keep a close eye on her. When that useless Ethan gets here, we'll have some real fun with his woman right in front of him. Let him know what happens when you cross Blake Harrison. The men chuckled obscenely, rubbing their hands together. Rage instantly overwhelmed my rationality. Bastard. I almost charged in without thinking, but my remaining sanity held me back. They outnumbered me. A direct confrontation had no chance. I had to use strategy. I forced myself to calm down, quickly assessing the warehouse environment, the number of men, and their positions. Then, I quietly retreated, pulled out my phone, quickly typed a text message, sending the warehouse location and a brief situation report to a trusted Coal Enterprises elder who had contacts within the police force. Bring reliable personnel immediately. Rescue. Keep it confidential. After all that, I put my phone on silent, took a deep breath, and picked up a rusted iron pipe about half a meter long, gripping it tightly. The cold touch slightly calmed my racing blood. Now, I needed to create a distraction to buy time. I circled to the side of the warehouse, found a damaged vent, picked up a stone, and forcefully threw it at a pile of discarded oil drums in the distance. Clang! The loud noise was incredibly jarring in the silent pier. What was that sound? Someone's outside. The lewd laughter inside the warehouse instantly ceased. Blake and the men immediately became alert, grabbing nearby clubs and knives, cautiously moving towards the door. Now, like a lurking leopard, I burst from my hiding spot. Using the moment their attention was diverted, I launched an attack from their flank. My target, the blonde guy closest to me. Crack! The iron pipe, carrying all my anger and strength, slammed into the back of his neck. He didn't even have time to scream before he crumpled to the ground. Damn it, it's Ethan. He's here, Blake realized, roaring with a mix of shock and fury. Get him! The remaining 4 men immediately rushed at me, wielding their weapons. The warehouse space was limited, making it hard to dodge. Relying on the element of surprise and a reckless, desperate ferocity, I swung the iron pipe, blocking the first wave of attacks. The pipe clashed with clubs and knives, emitting screeching metallic sounds, sparks flying. I took several hits, a burning pain spreading through my body, but my adrenaline surged, making me almost impervious to the pain. My eyes were fixed on Vivian, tied to the chair. She saw me appear, her pupils dilating. Muffled cries came from behind her taped mouth, and her body struggled violently, her eyes filled with worry and fear. She was worried about me. This realization, like a shot of adrenaline, surged through my body, giving me boundless strength. "Vivian, don't be afraid. I'm here," I yelled at her while parrying attacks. Blake, hiding behind his men, screamed in frustration. "Useless. For if you can't even handle one of him, beat him to death." The 4 men attacked even more fiercely. I was, after all, outnumbered. My movements were slightly too slow, and my leg was slashed. Blood instantly gushed out, staining my pants. The sharp pain made me pause, and then a heavy blow landed on my back. My throat tasted sweet, and I almost coughed up blood. "Ethan!" Vivian saw I was injured. She struggled even harder, tears streaming down her face. My heart felt a sharp twist. I couldn't fall. Absolutely not. I gritted my teeth, enduring the attacks with sheer willpower. Spotting an opening, I forcefully thrust the iron pipe into a large man's stomach. He screamed in pain, clutching his stomach as he fell to his knees. The pressure eased slightly, but the other 3 became even more frenzied. Just as I was about to give out, screeching police sirens suddenly echoed from outside the warehouse. Getting closer. "They're here." My spirits lifted. Blake and his thugs' faces instantly changed. "Damn it, how did the cops get here?" Blake was both shocked and furious. "Let's go." He ignored Vivian, turning to escape through the back door of the warehouse. The other thugs panicked, their formation breaking apart. "Trying to run? No way, I was letting him go." Enduring the sharp pain, I lunged forward, fiercely grabbing Blake's leg. "Let go of me, you psycho." Blake struggled in terror, wildly stabbing at me with his knife. The sharp blade cut my arm, blood poured out, but I wouldn't let go. "Vivian, run." "Hijo de hea." Vivian, at some point, had managed to drag her chair closer to the wall and was frantically rubbing her wrists against something to fray the ropes. Seeing me stabbed by Blake, her eyes instantly flared with an almost insane despair and fury. Just then, the warehouse door was violently flung open. "Police, don't move." Several powerful flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the warehouse as if it were daylight. Several uniformed officers rushed in, quickly securing the scene. The thugs, seeing the police, immediately put their hands on their heads and squatted down, not daring to resist. Blake was also wrestled down by the police who rushed in next. "Let me go. Do you know who I am? My father is Blake Harrison Sr." Blake continued to struggle and yell in vain. A crisis, it seemed, was temporarily averted. I released Blake's leg, collapsing to the ground, utterly drained, gasping for air. The wounds on my body stung, and blood soaked my clothes. But I ignored them, my gaze anxiously searching for Vivian. The police were helping her untie the ropes and tear off the tape from her mouth. The moment the ropes were off, she didn't hesitate, didn't even respond to the police's questions. Like a startled butterfly, she stumbled and threw herself towards me. "Ethan." She fell beside me, her trembling hands carefully touching the wounds on my arm and leg, tears streaming down her face like broken pearls. "How are you? Does it hurt? You're bleeding so much." Her voice was choked with sobs and an unprecedented panic. Her usually cool eyes were now brimming with heartache and fear. This was the first time I had ever seen her so out of control, so vulnerable, and it was for me. My heart felt like it was filled with the softest thing, all pain becoming insignificant in that moment. "I'm fine, don't cry." I raised my uninjured hand, wanting to wipe away her tears, but paused because of the bloodstains on my hand. But she grabbed my hand, pressing it tightly against her cool cheek, her tears wetting the back of my hand. "You idiot! Who told you to come alone? It was so dangerous." She sobbed, rambling incoherently. "What would I do if something happened to you?" Her words, like a bolt of lightning, exploded in my mind. She was afraid of losing me. This realization made my heart pound, almost bursting from my chest. I turned my hand, gripping her cool hand tightly. My gaze met her tear-filled eyes. "Because you were here." My voice was a little hoarse from blood loss and emotion, but incredibly clear, incredibly firm. Through hell and high water, I had to come. Vivian stared at me, tears streaming even faster. But she didn't flinch, didn't push me away. Instead, she reached out her other hand and gently caressed my injured cheek, her fingertips trembling slightly with an unspoken tenderness. In that moment, all barriers, all suspicions, all hurts seemed to meld away in her tears and my blood. The air was filled with the scent of blood and her cool fragrance. Around us were the busy figures of the police and Blake Harrison's resentful curses. But in our world, only we seemed to exist. Her eyes were no longer cold, no longer guarded, only completely dependent and holding a deep, sea-like emotion I had never seen before. I looked at her face, so close, tear-stained yet still breathtakingly beautiful, and an inexpressible urge surged through me. I slowly leaned down closer to her. This time, she didn't flinch. She even, subtly, closed her eyes. Long eyelashes still held glistening tears, like trembling butterfly wings. Just as my lips were about to meet hers, Mr. Cole, Ms. Hayes, we need to take your statements. Also, the ambulance will be here shortly. Let's treat your wounds first. A police officer's voice sounded nearby. The intimate atmosphere was broken. Vivian abruptly opened her eyes, her cheeks instantly flushing. She recoiled like a startled deer, hurriedly lowering her head. I looked at her flushed ears, feeling a little regretful, but mostly filled with overwhelming sweetness and contentment. No ruse. We had all the time in the world. The ambulance arrived quickly, and paramedics briefly treated our wounds. My knife wounds on my leg and arm needed stitches, and I was instructed to go to the hospital immediately. Vivian, though only shaken and with minor scrapes, insisted on accompanying me. In the ambulance, she held my hand tightly, refusing to let go for a moment, as if I might disappear if she did. I looked at her worried profile, my heart melting. After tonight, that invisible wall between us seemed to have completely crumbled. At the hospital, I was taken to the treatment room for stitches. Vivian waited outside, never leaving. The stitching process was painful, but my heart felt like it held a warm stove, glowing warmly, because I knew she was right outside the door, worrying and waiting for me. After the stitches, I was moved to a hospital room for observation. Vivian walked in and sat by the bed, silently watching me, her eyes complex. "Does it still hurt?" she asked softly, reaching out to carefully touch my bandaged arm. "No." I shook my head, looking at her. "What about you? Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine." She lowered her eyes, her long eyelashes casting shadows. "Thank you for saving me. Do we still need to say thank you between us?" I took her hand, looking at her. "You're my wife. Protecting you is only natural." Vivian's face flushed again, but this time she didn't argue. She just let me hold her hand, her fingertips subtly curling in my palm, like a silent affirmation. That anonymous text message. She looked up, confused. "Did your people send it?" I shook my head. "No, I'm also curious who sent it. But thanks to that message, I was able to find you in time." "Who could it be? Helping us from the shadows?" Vivian and I exchanged glances, both seeing the same confusion in the other's eyes. But at this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that she was safe. What mattered was that we were together. Night deepened. The hospital room was quiet, with only the soft sounds of our breathing. Vivian seemed utterly exhausted. Holding my hand, she leaned against the bed and fell asleep. Her sleeping face was peaceful, carrying the fatigue of having escaped a harrowing ordeal. I looked at her quiet, sleeping face, my heart filled with a peace and happiness I had never known. I gently pulled my hand from hers and smoothed her slightly furrowed brow. Then, very, very lightly, I pressed a gentle kiss on her smooth forehead. "Sleep, Vivian," I whispered. "From now on, I'll be the one to protect you." The warm touch on her forehead was as soft as a feather. Vivian's eyelashes fluttered slightly, but she didn't wake up. She was too tired. Her taut nerves, once assured of safety, had completely relaxed, plunging her into a deep sleep. I leaned back on a hospital bed, gazing at her tranquil face, my heart filled with an unprecedented sense of contentment and happiness. It felt like a long-wandering boat had finally found a safe harbor. The sky outside the window slowly lightened. A new day was about to begin. After this night, many things would be different. Blake Harrison and the forces behind him were destined to pay for everything they had done. And between her and me, that long-standing layer of ice had finally completely melted. Sunlight peeked through the blinds, quietly sneaking into the hospital room, dancing on her face. She stirred slightly and slowly opened her eyes. The initial haze of sleep faded, and when she recognized her surroundings and my gaze fixed on her, her eyes instantly cleared, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible shyness. "You're awake?" She sat up straight, smoothing her slightly disheveled hair. Her voice had returned to its usual coolness, but the deliberately maintained distance was gone. "Yeah," I said, looking at her, a smile spreading across my lips. "Did you sleep well?" Her cheeks flushed slightly. She avoided my gaze, looking at my bandaged arm and leg, her brows furrowed. "Do your wounds still hurt?" "No." I shook my head, reaching out to take her hand, but she recoiled as if burned, pulling it away sharply. Her movement was so fast, it almost created a draft. I paused, surprised. Was she still unaccustomed to such intimate contact? The tearful Vivian who had clung to my hand last night seemed like just a hallucination. Vivian also seemed to realize her reaction was excessive. She pursed her lips, her eyes flickering, then whispered, "I'll go call the doctor to check on you." With that, she practically fled. I looked at her retreating figure and smiled helplessly. "It's okay. We have plenty of time." I had enough patience to wait for her to fully open her heart to me. After the doctor examined me, he said my wounds were healing well, but I still needed to stay in the hospital for 2 days for observation. Vivian silently noted the doctor's instructions, then left for a bit. When she returned, she carried a thermos. "Maria made some oatmeal and a few small dishes," she said, placing the items on the nightstand. She awkwardly dished out a bowl and handed it to me. "Eat something." I looked at the steaming white oatmeal, my heart warm. "My hand's a little inconvenient," I said, looking into her eyes deliberately. Vivian's movement stopped. She looked at my bandaged arm, then at the bowl in her hand. Her ears flushed visibly. After a few seconds of internal struggle, she finally sat down, picked up the spoon, scooped a bit of oatmeal, gently blew on it, then offered it to my mouth. Her movements were still a little stiff, and her eyes avoided mine. But in my heart, I was already overjoyed. "Oh yeah, my wife is feeding me oatmeal again." I opened my mouth and ate, my eyes fixed on her. She grew uncomfortable under my gaze and snapped, "What are you staring at?" "Eat. My wifey's beautiful," I said with a grin after swallowing the oatmeal. Her cheeks flushed even redder. She scooped another spoonful, rather roughly stuffing it into my mouth, trying to shut me up, but I continued, muffled, "The oatmeal my wifey feeds me is the best oatmeal in the world." Her movements paused slightly, her eyelashes fluttering. She didn't look up, just mumbled, "Sweet talker." Sunlight streamed on her lowered eyelashes, casting small shadows. In that moment, everything felt perfectly peaceful. I wish time could stop right there. Over the next 2 days, Vivian stayed in my hospital room almost constantly. Her phone rang incessantly with company matters, but each time she finished a call, she would immediately return to the room. She no longer resisted my proximity. When I held her hand, she would still stiffen slightly, but she wouldn't immediately pull away. When I told her silly jokes, she still wouldn't laugh heartily, but the corners of her lips would curve distinctly. When I watched her sleep, she would unconsciously lean towards me. The invisible barrier between us was slowly disappearing, replaced by an unspoken intimacy and understanding. The day I was discharged, the sun was shining brightly. Vivian drove me home herself. As I got into the car, she handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked, puzzled, taking it. "Take a look," she said, starting the car, her gaze fixed on the road, her tone even. I opened the folder. Inside were a share transfer agreement and several asset certificates. A quick glance revealed astonishingly large sums of money. "This is—" I looked at her shocked. "Blake Harrison and those Cole Enterprises elders have been officially investigated. These are some of the assets and shares they previously embezzled from Cole Enterprises and from you personally." Vivian's voice was calm, as if discussing the most ordinary thing. "I got them back for you." I looked at her comp profile, a storm raging in my heart. In the 2 days I was hospitalized, she had quietly done so much. She had, with lightning speed, cleared out Blake Harrison and those parasites, and even helped me reclaim my lost assets. How? How'd you do it? My voice was a little dry. Just business, she said dismissively, glancing at me. What? Do you think I shouldn't interfere in Cole Enterprises' affairs? No. I immediately denied, my heart filled with an inexpressible emotion and a strange feeling of being protected by a powerful force. I had always wanted to protect her. Yet, in the end, it always seemed to be her clearing obstacles for me. This woman was far stronger, far more captivating than I had ever imagined. Thank you, Vivian, I said truly. Her hands on the steering wheel tightened slightly, her ears coloring again, but her voice remained even. Don't thank me. I just didn't want to see what belongs to you being tainted by those lowlifes. I looked at her flushed ears, and that touch of emotion in my heart deepened into a profound tenderness. She was always like this, doing the most caring things with the coolest demeanor. The car drove back to the estate in the hills. Everything felt unchanged, yet everything was different. Maria, seeing us return, beamed with joy and began preparing a lavish celebratory dinner. In the evening, we sat on the garden swing. The last rays of the setting sun painted the sky a warm orange red. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of flowers. That anonymous text message. I brought it up again. Did you ever find out who sent it? Vivian shook her head, a hint of confusion in her eyes. No, the number was from a burner phone, untraceable. The sender seemed to know a lot about Blake's movements and also about our relationship. She spoke the words, our relationship, very softly. I looked at her profile, softened by the setting sun, and my heart stirred. I reached out and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. She only trembled slightly, then let me hold it. Her fingertips were cool, delicate, and smooth. Vivian, I said, looking at her, my voice unconsciously becoming more serious. Once all this is truly settled, let's start over, okay? Vivian's body stiffened noticeably. She sharply turned to look at me, her eyes filled with shock and a hint of disbelieving hope. Start over. Yes, I tightened my grip on her hand, looking deeply into her eyes, allowing no retreat. Let's forget all the unpleasantness from before. Forget that jerk, Ethan. Only remember this current me, who loves you, wants to protect you, and wants to spend the rest of his life with you. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet evening, it was exceptionally clear, carrying a solemnity like a vow. Vivian stared at me, her eyes visibly welling up. Tears quickly blurred her beautiful eyes. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but no sound came out. Only large, unbidden tears streamed down her cheeks, like broken pearls scalding my hand. I panicked, fumbling to wipe her tears away. Don't cry. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? She vigorously shook her head, but her tears flowed even faster. Then, completely unprepared, she suddenly threw herself into my arms. Her arms wrapped tightly around my waist, her face buried deep in my chest, her shoulders trembling slightly with suppressed sobs. Her warm tears quickly soaked my shirt. I froze. This was the first time she had embraced me so actively, so clearly. She was showing me her vulnerability and dependence. I slowly raised my hands and gently hugged her back, stroking her back rhythmically, like comforting a frightened animal. Don't cry, I murmured softly. From now on, I'll never let you cry again. She cried even harder in my arms, as if all the grievances, anxieties, and pains of the past years were finally being completely released through this opportunity. After who knows how long, her crying gradually subsided into quiet sniffles. She remained nestled in my arms, not moving. The sun had completely set below the horizon. Night fell, and stars began to twinkle in the inky blue sky. The garden lights automatically switched on, casting a soft glow. Ethan, she mumbled from within my arms, her voice still thick with tears. HM, I softly responded. Do you mean it? Her voice was very quiet, with a hint of uncertain probing. Of course I mean it, I replied without hesitation, cupping her face and making her look into my eyes. Her eyes were red from crying, like a small rabbit's, her face still tear-streaked, looking both pitiful and adorable. I leaned down and very, very gently kissed away the tears from the corner of her eyes. They were salty, yet carried her unique, cool fragrance. Her body trembled slightly. She closed her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings. She didn't resist. My kiss, following her tear tracks, slowly moved downwards, eventually landing on her slightly parted, soft, and cool lips. Like a butterfly resting on a petal. Gentle, precious. Her breathing instantly paused, her body stiffening for a moment. Then like melting ice, she slowly softened. The hands wrapped around my waist unconsciously tightened, responding to my kiss with a clumsy tenderness. The night breeze was soft, the sky full of stars. The swing gently swayed. Everything else vanished. Only the mingling sounds of our breaths and heartbeats remained. And on our lips, that sweet, heart-stirring taste. This kiss, unlike previous ones, carried no desperate possessiveness or tenacity. Instead, it was filled with tenderness, promises, and love. After who knows how long, we finally broke apart, breathless. Foreheads touching, breaths mingling. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes moist, reflecting the starlight and me. "Vivian Hayes," I said, looking in her eyes, each word clear and distinct. "I love you." Her pupils suddenly dilated, instantly welling up with even more moisture. But this time she didn't cry. She just looked at me for a very, very long time. Then she stood on tiptoe and initiated a kiss on my lips, using a kiss to answer everything. Moonlight streamed down like water, gently enveloping us as we embraced. I knew, from this moment on, we were truly starting over.